Everybody, welcome back. Today we're getting started on a carb rebuild for a 2007 Honda Shadow 750 Spirit DC. It's the dual carb model, similar to the 1100 Shadows, the 600 Shadows. Um, really, most of the V-twin Honda engines that are dual carb, the same type of carburetor will apply, and really any carburetors. So, hope you guys enjoy. We're gonna get going on this, starting to pull them apart and give you guys some details.
So obviously the first things we got to do is get everything stripped off of these. So all of these lines are absolutely petrified. Try and get everything off with the least amount of damage. We can remake these hoses if we need. Vent lines. So we got our slides. Needles look a little dirty. I'm actually surprised. And these diaphragm rubbers actually feel pretty soft. So that's also kind of surprising. Gonna get these enrichers removed. Pretty nasty. Yeah, you can see there all the corrosion and nastiness on the enrichers. So get this throttle plate out of the way here if it'll come off. The screws look a little bit banged up. This fuel line is absolutely petrified. We're gonna have to come up with something new for this because this stuff will definitely leak if we put it back on. I'm hoping maybe Honda still has them available, but we'll have to see. Wow, these are surprisingly clean in here. The fuel tank is one of the nastiest fuel tanks I've ever seen. And the inside of this carburetor, at least, is very clean. I'm surprised. They must have drained the fuel out of the bowls or something. Let's see if we get this other one opened up and see if it looks the same. Yeah, these needle tips look a little trashy.
Like, what choice do I really have? And I said, no, I totally get it, but it'll be worth it. You can be back on the road. So,
yeah.
You know, gotta do what you gotta do, unfortunately.
Yeah, you know, gotta ride them. If you don't ride them, this is what happens.
Yeah. I know people are up, but I don't want to rail them all if they're laying in bed.
All right, so we got these all stripped down, and they're ready for their bath in the Ultrasonic. Alright, so we got our carbs out of the Ultrasonic. Time to reassemble. I got a Parts Unlimited rebuild kit here. I use these a lot. I sometimes use all balls kits. Really just depends on the bike, what's available for it. So, got our float needle and seat and crush washer, so we'll go ahead and get those put in. Something you do always want to check when you do these rebuilds is to make sure that the jets that came in the kits are the same as the jets you took out of the carburetor, especially if you're not familiar with the bike, because they could be jetted differently. Somebody may have put a jet kit or whatnot in there at some point in time, and you'll have all kinds of problems trying to figure out why the bike won't run right after you do your rebuild. So it looks like these might not match, so I'm going to clean up the original jets we took out. Luckily these carburetors were not nearly as dirty as we were expecting, and so we can just reuse the jets that they came with, make our life a lot easier, not have to worry about chasing our tails on jetting when we put this thing back together. Okay, I need a pile of jets. So this one pilot jet we got going here seems to be partially clogged. It is not the same size as our new jets, so we can't use our new jets, so I'm going to try and get it cleaned out. First thing I like to do is I use a little strand of copper wire, so you strip some back. The copper wire is nice and soft. It will not damage the orifice size in the jet. Do not use drill bits on your jets. I also do not recommend using torch tip cleaners from like a oxyacetylene torch, as those are basically little microscopic files, and they will also change the size of the jet, which you don't want. So there we go, little piece of trash in there, wire popped it right out. So that's just something to remember, is don't ever do anything that could change the size of the jet. The jets are very specific size, down to the thousandths of an inch, and altering that will give you problems. So alright, so we got our new floats in, our float needles rather, old floats. We'll go ahead and replace our float bowls. So, pop our old float bowl gaskets out. A lot of times these are real crusty and kind of hard to get out. There we go. One of the reasons I like the drag kits is they give you all new screws for the float bowls and stuff, which is nice because those screws tend to get stripped out and chewed up. They're just so it's nice to have new fresh hardware every time you put the bowls back on. Alright, one of the next things, and probably one of the biggest mistakes I see people make on carburetors, is the mixture screws. So you've got your mixture screw, then you put your spring, and then where I see a lot of people mess up is they just put that in the carburetor. But you need a little O-ring on there to seal that up so that you don't get air leaking around it. And then because the O-ring is there, you need this little tiny washer. Not sure if you can see this or not. Let's see if I'm all the way zoomed in, but you can kind of see it. So you put the little tiny washer on first. That protects the O-ring from the spring. If you put just the O-ring without that washer, when you screw the mixture screw in, it just tears the O-ring up, and yet again you have a leak. So you want to stack all that on, then thread your mixture screw all the way in till it stops lightly seated. Then you want to back it out to your settings. On this particular carburetor, they were out 2.5 turns. I always, when I dismantle them, count the turns just in case. They're almost all usually somewhere between 2 and 3 turns, and you can make adjustments from there obviously once you get the bike running, but having them set ahead of time just gives you a little bit of ease on the startup. Alright, last thing to do is we're gonna install the slides. Again, the kit does come with new needles, but if you check here, you can see that the needles in the slides, well, maybe you can't, but see if I'll get this to focus. There you go. You can see the needles that are currently in the slides have a much tighter taper. So this setup obviously has a jet kit in it. So we're not going to change those needles. We'll just clean these that are in here real good. They weren't real dirty. Again, these carburetors were somehow not really dirty, even though the gas tank is probably the most disgusting rotted gas tank I've ever seen in my life. So interesting how that happened, but whatever. Makes life a little easier on one end while we deal with the nastiness of the gas tank. So we're going to drop the slide back in, make sure your rubber seats down, put our spring in, and then we got our carburetor top. I like to do that and then let the slide go. I hold the slide up with my finger while I'm doing that. It lets me know the rubber stays in place. And again, new screws for the top of the slides, or the slide covers rather, with these kits. So go ahead and put all our fresh new screws in. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other carb. Got those done. Last thing we're going to do is put our fuel line back on. I was hoping to get fresh fuel line from Honda, but none of this with the bends is made, and so I think I'm going to just reuse these rather than trying to come up with some makeshift fuel line that really doesn't fit the curves right and give us a bunch of bends we don't need and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get these put back on, and we'll be ready to try and get these on the bike. Alright everybody, that's going to be a wrap for today. We got our carbs all cleaned. Obviously this was not a cosmetic rebuild, but a mechanical one. It's just a regular old stock bike, nothing special. And the additional cost of doing a cosmetic restoration on them just wouldn't make any sense for this customer. Plus, on this particular bike with the stock airbox and all that stuff, you can't even really see the carburetors. So that's what it is. We're done there. Couple key things you want to remember always: don't forget to check your jet sizes, comparing your new kit to what was currently in the carburetor. Don't forget the little washer and O-ring on your mixture screw. And just make sure you clean the bodies well. If you don't have an ultrasonic, you can actually boil a pot of water, put a little degreaser in there, and that rumble and boil. It's not quite as good as ultrasonic, but it will get the job done. Just make sure they're clean. Blow out all your passages. you know, and do the best you can to clean them. If you're not 100% sure, just clean them again. It's a pain in the butt to put them on and take them off. So the less times you have to do that, the better off you'll be. So anyway, as always, appreciate you guys being here. Hope somebody learned something useful today. And we hope to see you next time at Gaddy's Garage.